Hi everybody, welcome to the latest edition of Jungle's Green Room. They've allowed us back in after last time, so we must not have been too much of a disaster on the first one. I'm Tom Barker. I've been at Jungle IT now for coming on for 9 years, so very much part of the furniture at Jungle. But we've got a very special guest today who's actually a new member of the team that we're really excited to have on board. So I'd like to welcome on board Urfaan. Urfaan, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Tom, thank you very much. But I am going to take that intro with a pinch of salt because you did say the last guest was special as well.
Every guest that comes here is special, Urfaan.
There we go.
Anybody that'll give up their time for us on our podcast.
I am also very delighted to be here as a new member of the Jungle team. Well, a little bit about me. My background is I've worked with Microsoft and cloud technology for the last almost 15 years. If not a bit longer. I don't want to give away how old I am.
Don't give away your age.
But really, I've recently, in the last 5 years, focused on transformation and helping. That's a bit of a poisonous word, if I'm honest with you, Tom. But it's about translating really the tech into business objectives. That's really what I've tried to do for the last few years. So that's a little bit about my background, and why I'm excited to join Jungle is the direction we're going in helping organizations be more about business objectives rather than just the technology, which is exciting.
100%. And I think that's what we're here to talk about today, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know if you've seen the brief, but no, that's what we're here to talk about today. And I think, we're really excited sort of on today's podcast. We're going to be looking deeper than the technology, essentially. So I think in IT, sometimes the trap that people can fall into is that they can just focus on the technology bit and not the people bit that goes with it. So Urfaan and I will be bouncing around probably quite a lot on this podcast. And looking at, I guess, some of the key things you should consider as part of any good sort of technology roadmap. And I guess that the first question, sort of, if I'm starting us off, is sort of, why do you feel it's key to look beyond deeper than, I guess, that initial request for a piece of tech and really dig deep into sort of why the business needs it and aligning sort of with business goals? If you could give us some background on that.
Yeah, and I think we both agree that our experience, and most people in this area experience, is finding a problem and trying to solve it. And that's natural. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that approach. Looking at a particular problem to resolve that so we can continue business as normal. However, we have shifted from being an industry that fixes problems to being a growth engine, being that driver of business. Okay, so if we're going to follow this new approach, then we have to start taking a step back. I'm not just looking at the immediate problem. I don't know if you wanted to present me with one and we can give an example.
A common example that keeps coming up is obviously a lot of people looking down the Copilot route, for example, in the Microsoft stack, but they're very much aware that their data may be all over the place a little bit. They don't want staff using it to see things they shouldn't be seeing. So I guess that might be a live example, mightn't it, of that digging below the surface a little bit more about what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and if we take a very small component of how IT managers, IT directors, technical directors, CIOs, CTOs might try to resolve that problem, we are seeing data being the center of any AI discussion, okay? And rather than stepping back, I think what our natural response is to fix the data, normally by putting a layer of security or compliance on top of it. I think what we really need to be doing is understanding, going back to the source, which is somebody wanting to use Copilot to be more productive. I could do with a tool that can help me summarize. I could do with a tool that can help me be more proficient and efficient. Actually, I want a tool to help me put together a marketing campaign. So going back to the user and trying to understand what the purpose is, what their objective is, and why they've decided that Copilot might be the tool is where we need to be. And that's very difficult to do because we're problem solvers in IT. We want to fix the data problem so they can just go ahead and do what they want to do. But then where's the plan? Where is the deployment plan, the engagement plan? Because the people are going to make this a scenario successful or not.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one thing we see sometimes at a top level as well is sometimes the firms in question can look at what their competition are doing or what they think their competition are doing and fear that they're being left behind. So sometimes they can be asking for things technology-wise, but they don't really know the why. They're just not wanting to get left behind the competition. And again, it's that getting a deeper understanding of their business, how they work, what they're wanting to achieve, isn't it?
I've got a great example of that. What we're seeing is CEOs directing organizations to make an AI statement.
Yes.
When was the last time you heard a CEO make a backup and recovery statement, Tom? Has
Yeah.
that ever happened?
I was thinking
No.
certainly AI when I was saying that,
No.
but yeah, you're
So,
right.
no,
You're
we're
right.
not seeing statements about we're moving to the cloud and this is the reason why. We've never heard statements about, well, we have a great data resiliency plan and this is why, from leaders of business, especially CEOs. But why are we now hearing from CEOs saying we need to put out a public statement about how we're using AI? It's because it's so transformational, and CEOs and CFOs and technology leaders are getting together and having these conversations. So we now, as the people that help deliver those technologies, need to help them understand what that looks like. And actually going back to the original statement, which is, why do we need to use this level of automation and machine learning, which ultimately is what AI is,
Yeah.
and helping frame that in a process for a business moving forward. Really, that's where we need to be.
Yeah, and I guess linking in with sort of that senior top level leadership at a firm and linking that in with the IT function within a firm, how do you find that sort of, I guess, the listening element and the asking questions helps us in aligning the two? Because they're not always aligned, are they? Sometimes the IT strategy and then what the senior leadership in the firm is actually wanting.
It comes down to translating what those business objectives mean from a technology standpoint. Sometimes it's very difficult. We do what we know, we make things secure, we make things easy to access, and we make things compliant. But they aren't the business drivers,
No.
right? So how do we now have that make that shift? AI is forcing us, and Copilot and agentic AI is forcing us now to consider business objectives first. Otherwise, if it's tech led, addressing the audience directly is, I am sorry, if these initiatives, especially AI, is tech led, it does fail. And that's what we're seeing and that's what we're experiencing. And I wouldn't rely on just my view on this. Our partners in AWS, in Anthropic, at Microsoft have done a significant amount of research that shows these initiatives must be people first. And we can only do that by listening. Now, the challenge here is, Tom, how do we capture what they say and translate it into something that tech can deliver?
100%, and obviously I warned you we were going to bounce around a bit here, but I think the other thing is obviously the some of the staff at firms in their personal lives will be using technology that maybe the firm's not even rolled out yet. And it's that guardrails, that shadow IT piece, and it's making sure, isn't it, that everything is very neatly aligned with the business and its users, and they know what tools they can be using and how they should be using them.
Oh, absolutely. It's probably the third iteration of where technology that users use is better than what's available at work. Right. We saw this with websites when
Yeah.
this happened. Consumer websites led the way, and business websites and platforms were trailing. We saw this again with the introduction of things like the iPhone. We were used to the BlackBerry, but actually the user experience on an iPhone was much better. And then the technology was lagging in businesses. And now that it's happened again. There is a great graph that one of our esteemed colleagues, Sophie Cooper, shares with our customers that shows actually it took Facebook 3 years to get to 1 million monthly users, and it took Instagram even less. And it took OpenAI just over a month, nearly 2 months, to get 1 million monthly, 100 million, sorry, it's 100 million users a month. That is crazy. So we are lagging, and now we have to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and I think it's that to me is a really important thing for leadership at firms as well, because whether they like it or not, their users will be using things, won't they? You look at, are they plugging, sensitive information into Chat GPT? It's all those kinds of things. So I think it's very important, isn't it, for the firm to get on board with this is happening, and we need to put that structure in place to take it forward as a firm.
It absolutely is happening, and it's very difficult to detect. Shadow AI is what we're calling it, or
Yeah.
grey AI. We've had shadow IT for years. A lot of organizations do think they have a handle of monitoring that, but actually it's not the case because a lot of it's happening on a phone. So it is being used, and it's not difficult to combat. It's just we need to listen And again, I'm going to revert back to the original question I asked: is how do we capture what we've heard and turn it into something technology teams can enable? That's the challenge that a lot of customers and a lot of organizations are facing at the moment.
Yeah, and I think the listening bit is massive, and that's jungle listening when we're speaking to clients, and then I think it's internal IT departments listening. I was at sort of a roundtable meal not so long ago where one of the sort of IT leaders said he didn't have time to speak to the users within the business. And I think that's always sort of slightly dangerous, isn't it? You need to be speaking to your users, finding out what they're wanting, what can make their job roles easier to then help you with your roadmap.
That's absolutely correct. But do you mind if I address the very specific scenario
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking about?
yeah, yeah.
So, a lot of technology leaders don't have time because they're still fighting fires,
This
right?
is true.
So, but we need to talk their language, and their language is normally around technology and data. So, the way to overcome that is actually to just go into tools like Microsoft 365. A lot of organizations don't realize that Microsoft have a technology running through 365, which is called Microsoft Graph,
Yeah.
and that collects a lot of information. Now, it provides some very useful dashboards. There are dashboards within Microsoft 365 Admin Center that clearly demonstrate who's using what and if Copilot or Copilot Chat is in use. So, what that technology leader can do very quickly is go and have a look at who's using it
Yeah.
and then go and talk and listen to just those very specific people who are the most prolific. And then it might be worthwhile talking to those people who tried and stopped, and that data is very apparent. Now, when you're armed with powerful data like that, you can be very efficient with your time. And actually, I would be asking technology leaders to hand this over to other teams and actually bring in people from human resources, people from learning teams and training teams to try and lead this adoption and engagement initiative. I don't think technology teams and IT teams should own this part.
And do you know what? You're 100% right. I think we had a really specific example with a wonderful law firm that we worked with recently, and we had a call with their sort of innovation committee, and we were using Sophie again to big up Sophie. She was sort of leading the call with myself, and we were looking at the information in there, and I think they were quite surprised that some of the users that were really leveraging Copilot Chat, now they'd not been prompted by the business to really use it en masse, and it was like, hang on a minute, these people could add some real value to our innovation committee with what are they doing with it? They're clearly getting use out of it. It's clearly making their lives easier. Otherwise, they wouldn't still be using it so much. But like you said, it's leveraging those in this case, in the Microsoft environment, using those insights, isn't it, to help influence the way you're thinking and save time?
And if we, again, just reiterating the point, if we don't have time, and we don't as tech people, then we've got to lean on other parts of the business that this is going to impact. Reach out to the human resources teams, and I'll give an example of why that's important. Reach out to the learning and development teams and work together and hand over some of that responsibility. I know as techies don't like losing control, but right now there's some significant change going on, and we're not going to, coming back to your point, not going to be able to contain what people do, and they are going to be using AI. And as you demonstrated on that example, users are going away and using Copilot, and the business weren't even aware that these are the power users that are really using it, and they can share some of their learnings with the rest of the business.
Yeah, and I think expanding on your point, we've obviously talked about, I guess, that link up with sort of the C-suite, as it were, and the IT leadership and making sure that's aligned. But I think we're seeing now on a lot of projects, most projects fall outside of IT as well, doesn't it? IT might have an involvement to whatever extent, but I guess if you're looking at things like Microsoft Viva for employee engagement or Microsoft Purview for data governance, these are projects that involve much more than the IT team, aren't they?
Absolutely right. That is a very important point. And I think, again, I encourage IT leaders to scale outside of their immediate team. So, just to focus on adoption, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
like to
absolutely.
share some learnings. th- You would normally start with some kind of education when it comes to adoption. It's normally in the form of a workshop, and that's okay. We've done this many times, but really, a lot of users and a lot of champions even lose interest after the workshop because they've got their day job to do. And then what we normally lean on and refer to is some kind of tool that enables learning and development. So some kind of LMS tool, right? Something that helps provide training for AI might be the next step. But what we find is people use it for a little while and then it drops off again. And then what we might do is say, actually, we need a group of people, a proof of concept team, a champions team, technology whisperers. There's lots of different names for it, and they are the people who really want to do this off their own accord. But again, they have a day job, and it falls off. So what we ultimately found is you need someone to stitch all of that together, and having someone who is not in the technology team and is part of a change management or a learning management team to be the adoption specialist is the missing link. And then what you can do is really have a circle of activity, hold workshops, build a learning management system, have a champions program, have an adoption specialist, and start again. Have further workshops, continue to develop the learning management system, continue to build the champions program, and empower that adoption specialist. And I hope you can picture a circle of events there that is never ending. And if there's one piece of information I can impart today and share with the technology leaders that are listening, is to build an adoption program. And there's the secret sauce. That's how we've built ours. But holding workshops, providing a learning management system, building champions program, and then having an adoption specialist who can kind of stitch that together is the secret sauce we use and we share with our customers.
And I think the key bit there is that the technology, again, is only a small part of that. Where everything you were just saying, the majority of it was people.
Yeah.
And I think, and I guess, I know when we sort of spoke to Nigel from Switalski's on our last podcast, we sort of said it's that ever evolving role of an IT leader, isn't it? You know, whereas maybe a few years ago it was very, you know, heavy on the technology side of things, but now more than ever, it's that people bit, it's that speaking to other departments, it's the strategic bit. It's very, very people heavy, isn't it? That IT role now with a lot of the things.
But we can definitely put an IT lens on it. And the lens I like to put on business objectives from an IT perspective has got 3 pillars. And that is, our job is to make it secure. So security. Our job is to make our businesses productive. So productivity. And our job is to make those businesses compliant. So compliance. So really, from an IT perspective, how to enable business outcomes is to help them be secure, help productivity, and help compliance. Now, with AI, what we're focusing on is all 3 areas, but ultimately, we're driving operational efficiency. We're giving people AI superpowers. We're helping them be more operationally efficient and potentially more productive. So, here in this area, in AI, productivity is the lead, but we can't for a second not have secure design by default or ensure it's compliant. But that trifactor is where technology leaders should be focusing around business outcomes. So that's the tech lens to sit on top of business outcomes.
Yeah, and I guess it's getting the sort of users within a business excited about the technology, isn't it? I mean, I by a few of my colleagues, I get called a user quite a lot at Jungle, and I'll hold my hands up. You know, I am one of those people that goes, "Oh, I'm really, really busy. I'm far too busy to take 5 minutes out to look at this new thing you can do in Copilot," and that's to my detriment because then at times when Sophie has shown me, "Oh, it can do this, it can do that," and I'm thinking, "Well, that's brilliant. That saved me a load of time." But it's having someone, isn't it, to explain it to you as a user of, no, it is worth you taking some time out to see the benefits this can bring you because ultimately it'll make you more efficient.
I'm going to be quite frank and honest with my interpretation of what you said. If you do not invest in adoption, moving forward, those businesses are going to suffer, if not fail.
Yeah.
You brought a competitive lens to the conversation earlier and talked about how having a look at what competitors are doing is driving some of that behavior. A lot of research has gone into this. As you can imagine, billions of pounds and dollars rest on this. So organizations like Nvidia, Google, Microsoft, Anthropic have spent a lot of money. Now, you can either go and read that research yourself and white papers and understand how human behavior and technology is changing, or you can let organizations like ours translate that for you and help you understand. If you do not build an adoption program, which at the core of it means listen to your people, you will fail. And that's a bold statement for me to make, but I'm making it. I want to
100%.
share my learnings and I want to translate what those technology leaders are saying. And they are fundamentally saying adoption and change is critical. And you need to focus on investing a framework around adoption and change. And then any deployment of any technology can fit within that framework. If it's rolling out SharePoint, it fits within that framework. If it's rolling out Copilot, it fits within that framework. If it's Claude Cowork, if it's Claude Code, it doesn't matter. It fits within that framework. If it's actually rolling out new devices, everyone's getting a new laptop, it fits within that framework. So again, I'm going to say it. If you don't build a foundational adoption and change program, your business won't be able to adopt technology that aligns with your business outcomes, and that ultimately leads to business failure in many cases.
And I guess tying in with that, it's not a one-off thing, is it? It's not, well, we're going to do an IT project, so we're really going to dig beneath the surface on this one project to make sure it's a success. It's changing your business mindset. So, like you said, with that framework, it applies constantly, all day, every day. This is what we're doing to make sure our business is a success and not a one-off.
Another word for framework, if you want a building term, is the foundation. What you're
Yeah.
doing is just laying the foundation. Do it once, try to make that right, but iterate, but then don't reinvent the wheel. Just follow that framework again and again. And what does that framework look like? It is listening to the people who are doing the job, capturing that information, and then building an adoption cycle that says, okay, now we're going to disseminate that information across the rest of the business via workshops. It might be town halls. Again, I'm going to revert back to some kind of learning management system. Most organizations have them. The government and the AI initiative are making lots of material available for business for free. So are technology vendors. Building a group of people, call them what you want. We call them champions. And then finally having someone to orchestrate all of that. We call it an adoption specialist. So look, I really want to share this information with listeners, customers, and anybody who's interested. And we've got a framework, and we're happy to share it with anybody.
Yeah, I know, but I guess with the framework, it very much is tailored to each business, isn't it? Because no two businesses are the same either. And I guess that's part of your listening process, is it? Where you're really trying to get under the hood of that particular business, how they work, how they like to communicate with each other to make sure it's tailored to that business so it's successful.
My answer to that would be no.
Okay.
And the reason, because we're talking about the people. Humans, sciences are a science and have taught us human behavior is the same across all sections of business, right? So if we put the business aside and look at the people, they're going to behave in a certain way.
Okay,
So
yeah, so look at the
really, we
people
need to go
first.
back to the people first and listen to them. And it doesn't matter what business it is. People, there are going to be people out there, Tom, that go and queue for an iPhone when it's released. And there are those who are going to wait 2 weeks and think the queuers were idiots, right?
I think a few of the queuers work at Jungle.
Yeah. And it's that they might be the same type of people that go and are in a queue for watching the new Star Wars movie, right? I've been guilty of that. However, there are those people who still want their fax machine. And that doesn't change. That human curve, the law of innovation and diffusion, Simon Sinek talks about it. It's worth listening to him online. He talks about human behavior and how humans adopt any piece of technology or any change. So actually, it doesn't matter if that business is a haulage company or a law firm or a pharmaceuticals company. The human behavior within those companies will be the same. So the framework you build can be the same across all of those companies, which is, first you must listen and capture that information. And again, I'm reverting back to making sure there's a platform someone can go and learn from, making sure we find those innovators, the people who stand in queues and get the first iPhone, who want to do something to enable our businesses to do more. They are the people that built that amazing database in, many years ago and have got Excel sheets that have got lots of formulas in there. Those citizen developers are going to be the ones that step forward and say, I want to help with this innovation and help develop. And then finally, again, going back to that orchestrator, someone who can stitch all of that together. So I would challenge you and say, actually, the framework can be the same across businesses. But in each vertical area, there are going to be nuances to consider.
Yes.
So law firms are going to have to consider, and financially regulated organizations are going to have to put a stronger compliance focus on this. Whereas if you've got agile software development firms, they are going to be looking at iterating and productizing much quicker. So their focus might be productivity, but everyone will need to focus on security by design, because data is at the heart of everything we do. And exposing that data in areas we don't want to happen is going to be the problem. So security by design.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that the data bit is almost regarded as the unglamorous bit that people find a bit boring, and they're like, "Oh, it's the data bit." But that does really underpin a lot of this, doesn't it, really? And having that good data governance and your data in order.
It is. It's the most valuable resource in the
Yes.
world, right? And the organizations that are the most valuable organizations in the world mine exactly that resource, which is data, and use that data then to make intelligent decisions that end up making us spend a lot of money with them, right? So it's the same here. It's boring, and this is technology departments to consider, but we shouldn't be doing the work ourselves. The
No.
IT departments should not be doing all the work when it comes to data. It should be a shared responsibility with the people who use that data. So it's boring, but having some kind of data taxonomy and categorizing that data like we used to do in, I'm not old enough to know this, but you might. They used to stamp pieces of paper saying confidential. Do you remember those days? I've seen it in films.
Have you? Yeah, yeah. I think I'm a bit too young for that. My hairline says different, but I think I'm a bit too young for that.
So that was a data
Yeah, yeah.
categorization as classified or confidential. Actually, we need to be thinking about categorizing all sets of data and providing some kind, this is the boring bit, providing some kind of structure to that data and understanding what access is needing to that data is needed for that data, and how secure that access needs to be and what compliance needs to happen. But that piece of data strategy and structuring doesn't need to be at the detriment of deploying technologies like Copilot. They can work side by side,
Yes.
because it's not about if we're ready for AI, it's how ready are we? And everyone's on a journey. And if you do put a stop to it, there's going to be shadow AI, and you're probably going to be left behind when it comes to competitive advantage. So
Yeah, and I guess from the sort of, we've talked about, I guess, different types of projects, haven't we? But ultimately, with that listening bit and us really getting under the skin of what the firm's trying to achieve, we can knit everything together, can't we? Then, so it's the data strategy, it's the AI strategy. Ultimately, it's all linked, isn't it? And it's us trying to get that deeper understanding of where you're trying to go as a business, then linking it all into a coherent plan for them.
it is, and that's why I keep reverting back to frameworks. We're not
Yeah.
inventing anything here. What we're doing is taking really deep research in this area, translating it for small and medium-sized businesses and enterprise to a certain extent, and making it digestible. That's all we're doing here. That's what we do. And what I'd like to do is arm anybody listening with that same type of framework. It's very simple. There are some modular steps, but really it's about sticking to something that we know that works and following it at each step and not skipping bits out just because they're difficult. You can always come back around to it. And I want to use cleaning data as an example of that. It doesn't need to happen completely before you start, but it needs to be a milestone that needs to be achieved or revisited regularly.
And we've obviously touched on, Copilot, AI, etc. There may be cynics out there that think this is a bubble in the stock market, in the actual technology itself. What's your view generally on AI?
So I'm not going to say it's a bubble, but I am going to use another word, and I would say it is inflated. However, there is significant substance to what's happening in machine learning. And is it AI? There is a certain extent where it is AI, but it's not true sentient artificial intelligence, but we might not be far from that. But ultimately, what I want to say is, and it's a big statement, that the limit to what businesses can now achieve is their imagination and their ambition.
Hmm.
So that's a big statement. You can now achieve anything you put your mind to because the tooling behind it is allowing you to do it. You don't need a team of 100 people to do that anymore. We can build agents. Agents can build agents. So it's the trend is real. And Microsoft used a term that we no longer can follow the curve if you want to innovate. You have to bend the curve yourself. So I'm going to say it again. Any business is now limited by their imagination and their ambition. That's a bold statement to make.
And I think you're 100% right, because we had a firm that we were speaking to recently, and they had around 50 staff. They're looking to double the size of the business in the next couple of years, but in reality, they're not actually looking at adding many staff to do that, because they're wanting to adopt AI, and double the size of the business without really adding to the headcount. So it's not that it's sort of threatening anyone's existing jobs; it's just empowering the existing staff to work more effectively, adding a few staff, but doubling the size of the firm. And that's them sort of using their imagination, isn't it, for how they can grow the firm without necessarily growing headcount by much.
And that's 100% true. What we're seeing is a reallocation of resource. And something I wanted to touch on is a trend we saw early on, is fading a little bit, is where we're seeing the chief people officer role and the chief technology officer role converging.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have expected that in the past. But if you think of human resources and technology resources, which we're now calling agentic in the age of AI, a resource is a resource. So should it matter if it's the CPO or the CTO leading that initiative of allocating and utilizing those resources? We thought we were going to see a convergence of those two roles, but actually what we're seeing is more in alignment between technology teams and human resources teams, because people are going to be at the heart of this agentic revolution. So if I try and paint a picture, it's not going to be a bunch of robots walking around like cyborgs. It's actually going to be people in Iron Man suits or in exoskeletons driving the agents to do more. And we're probably going to call them orchestrators or AI bosses. But without the people, this doesn't happen. I am not a believer that AI is going to replace everybody, but it's going to give people superpowers.
Yeah, and I guess it can, like I used that previous example of the firm wanting to grow. I guess you're not having to go out and recruit loads of people, though, are you? Because you're using the technology to do some of that heavy lifting, and then you've not got them leaving your business because you're using the technology. So I guess it can allow your business to scale, can't it, if you harness it right?
Exactly right. So if I just frame it this way, you need a resource to do that job. If
Yeah.
you're going to grow this business, you need a resource to carry out that task. So what we're seeing the research showing is the org structure is going to collapse, and now it's going to be task led. So if you want to grow your business, normally you'd go and hire a resource, but instead what you're probably going to do is task one of the existing people to go and find an agentic resource that can actually do the work with you. So you're growing without growing the human resource. Instead, you're using agentic resource instead. So that's probably what's going to happen. That's what a lot of our vendors are saying, and that's my prediction.
Absolutely. It's an ever-changing landscape, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess sort of taking us home with some quick fire questions there, Fan, just
Yes.
to put you on the
Okay.
put you on the spot. So this is one I asked Nigel on our last podcast, and he cheated and had two. But I was going to ask you for one piece of advice that you would give to an IT leader in a business. One piece of golden advice.
Okay. My advice to an IT leader now is really embrace the people component of this and try and build an adoption and change program. Keep it really simple, and try not to own it yourself. Have a shared responsibility model and work closely with maybe learning and development departments or HR departments to try and build a technology adoption program. So that's my advice.
Fantastic. And then this one, I already have an idea what you're going to say, because we're reviewing the books that you've been listening to before we came in here. But sort of what book or podcast sort of has really shaped you as a person and your ideas? If you again had to pick just one, what would you recommend to the people watching?
If I have to pick one book that fundamentally changed the way I think, I would say it's a book called Factfulness
Okay.
by Hans Rosling. And now I'm going to put everybody off. It's a book about stats.
Wow, right, okay.
Right. However,
reading.
Hans Rosling is single-handedly changed how a lot of people think about stats because he's made it fun. So it's a really good read. So why I think this book is very relevant for technology leaders is because it really points to the origin of data, because it can be misinterpreted. So Hans Rosling really strips it back to understanding actually what the data is saying, and not trying to read between the lines when it's very apparent. So
Yes.
it's stats, but it's fun and it's a good listen or read.
Fantastic. No, thank you for that recommendation. And then we've probably already slightly touched on this, but final question. What emerging technology trend are you most excited about?
Yes, I've spoke about it a few times here. It's agentic AI. So actually building or using pre-built agents that actually carry out tasks. Can I give you an
Yeah,
example of one? Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So everyone's using Teams. A lot of people have got Copilot, the free version, at least inside Microsoft 365. Teams has a meeting agent that can take all the notes, summarize them, and allocate the task to the individual that took responsibility on the call, and also automatically prompt things you missed during the discussion. Now, that is called an agent because it's actually doing something. It's taking information, translating it into actions, and allocating the actions. So, agentic AI is really the thing I'm most excited about. And a sister component of that is AI skills. And what AI skills are, it they are there to digest your current standard operating procedures and policies and building them into every agent you build, or every time you use an LLM, it sticks to your policies. So now there's no deviation from best practice. So if you already have documented procedures and processes or standard operating procedures, putting them into an AI skill means the AI will follow your policies moving forward. So there's a tip as well.
So, yeah, Irfan, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. We love having you on the Jungle team, even though it's still early days for you. And thank you for, I guess, all the insight that you've added on the podcast. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and we're just really looking forward to working with you going forward. So, thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you.
us today.
I'm very excited and I've really enjoyed this discussion. Thank you so
Lovely.
much.
Right. Well, thank you for everybody that's joined us today. We don't take for granted your time when watching and listening to our podcast, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one again soon. Thank you very much.